Well, good evening, everybody, and thanks for having me here. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Meyer, and I'm a high school physics teacher at York Mills Collegiate in Toronto. And today, I changed the title of my talk a little bit. I want to talk to you about scientific teaching. So, to begin with, I do have a bit of a confession to make, and that is I am a physicist. And I just want to share with you a little bit of my story, of my experience being a physicist and also being a teacher, and some of the insights that I've gained, which hopefully you'll find useful as well. So, being a physicist, there's often very awkward moments, especially when you go to the cocktail party. Because this is my experience. It happened over and over and over again, and chatting away with people at the party, and inevitably they ask, so what do you do? And I'll say, oh, I'm a physicist, or I'm a physics teacher, and the responses are very uniform. So often there's an ashen look that falls on their face, and they say, wow, physics, eh? They have distant, but not so fond memories of it from high school. Occasionally, I'll bump into another individual who says, yeah, I liked physics, but I didn't do very well at it in school. I'm just curious to know, how many of you took a physics course in your high school or university? Okay, that's good. Any physicists in the room? Excellent. So this is a very common experience for me, and it does leave one with the impression that as physicists we are perceived by the wider world as these strange and unusual creatures. But deep down, I truly believe that physicists are awesome. And if you'll indulge me for a moment, just for a moment here. Physicists are really awesome because we figured out that the universe is made out of atoms. These are iron atoms imaged by a scanning tunneling electron microscope. We figured out that the universe started from a big bang, 13.7 billion years ago. That's pretty cool. We invented transistors, which are the basis for all modern electronic technology, and things like the internet. One of the side benefits of being a physicist is I get to say we for a lot of these things, where I've done none of this. But, we're a very friendly group, and we support each other. So, the transistors, we invented lasers, also the backbone of the internet, and we invented the World Wide Web, which is what is commonly understood to be the internet. So, we've done pretty well. And, for good reasons, we think of ourselves as awesome. Now, before you think I'm kind of getting a swollen head here, as you know from your creative writing experience, you have to set up the protagonist, right, before the fall. Now, physicists are also teachers. We've been teaching for a very, very long time. One of the most famous physics teachers is this gentleman here, my personal hero, Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize in Physics, and famous for his extraordinary abilities to explain and inspire. And one of the most famous things that he did was teach the first year physics course at Caltech. And his buddies dutifully wrote down everything that he said in the lectures, all the notes from the board, and it's still published and read to this day. Very, very famous set of lectures. Now, after teaching for this first year at Caltech, Feynman looked back on the final exams, and he noticed that many of the students were not doing as well as he would have hoped. But thankfully, some of his friends pointed out, there was 1 or 2 dozen students who actually did really quite well. And so Feynman was very much relieved. Okay, it's good. That is success. And so, not only are physicists teachers, but we are still awesome. But let's think about this for a moment. Because what about all those other students in his class? Exactly how much did they learn? Well, let's take a typical student, typical physics student, let's say. And you know, as hardworking and earnest teachers, we do our best to transmit our physics wisdom and understanding to the student. But the real question is, what's getting in there? What's staying? Do we really know the answer to this question? Well, for a long time we didn't. We just thought we were awesome because, you know, we would teach our students and one day that student would go win a Nobel Prize. So, right, it's proof positive. But about 30 years ago, a group of physicists began to answer this question in earnest. You know, what is really sticking in the brains? How well are we doing for all these other students in our class? The ones that Feynman didn't recognize as getting it. So what they did is they compiled a set of questions. And I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. The first one, don't panic, don't worry. The first one is a warm-up. But this is the reason why I've given you the multiple choice letters. Now in my classroom, I have these nicely printed out on colored paper and laminated. You guys are getting the cheap version here, so I apologize for that. But the process that I go through with my students when we use our multiple choice letters is, I'll give them a question, read it over carefully, choose an answer privately without any discussion with your neighbors. And so they flip to their answer, and they put it face down. They do this all top secret. So I'm going to ask you to fold over your letters once you've chosen your answer, and do it privately. So as I mentioned, the first question is a warm-up. So please read it over carefully, fold it, put it face down, and then I will know you're ready. And exactly as I do with my own class, I instruct my students, when you're sharing your answers with me, please keep your eyes to the front. Don't look around at other people's responses. It's really just for me to see. So, eyes to the front, everybody. And please hold them up. So keep them up for a few moments there so I can take a look around. And I'm kind of doing a little mental tally here. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I do see a lot of B's, and then some people answered the B's there, and a few curious answers that would register down here. But it's a good, quick way to gather information and get feedback from your students. Now, it's time for the physics question. There's only one today, only one physics question. But we're going to go through that same process. So a person is swinging a ball on a rope in a horizontal circle like this. We're watching it from above. That's the bird's eye view. And then the string snaps, and the ball is right at this position. After this happens, what path will the ball take if you're watching it from up above? So again, similar process. Take a moment to reflect on it yourself. Fold over your answers, choosing privately. And then once I see that my class is ready, I say eyes to the front, and hold them up, please. Hold them up. And looking around, doing a quick, no looking at those answers. I know it's tempting. Thank you very much, thank you very much. So popular answers were A and B, and there was a smattering of other ones there. Now at this point, in my class, say, okay, the class score was probably about 40–50% correct. Now it's time to have a little discussion. So I'd like you to turn to your neighbors, and I would like the person living farthest away from Victoria College to talk first. And you will explain your choice of answer. So if you can get in groups of 2 or 3, whatever is convenient, just turn to a neighbor and share your answer. Okay, please make your choice. Eyes to the front, no looking around. And hold them up, please. Hold them up.
Sorry, do we know our group answer?
Your personal answer based on your group discussion.
Oh, I see. Oh.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. And the class score went from maybe about 40% correct to about 60 or 70% correct. So we're doing well. So, you want to know the answer?
Yes.
No. So the correct answer is B.
Yes.
So once the straight breaks, there's no horizontal forces anymore. Newton's first law says it has to go on in a straight line. But you guys did great for your first physics lesson in a long time, perhaps. Now this is a very standard process for my classroom, and I wanted to give you a little peek at it. Now, so you can see that this is me using it with my different questions. Different questions. With my students. Now, the interesting thing about the question that I just showed you and the whole set of questions that it came from is that if you show these questions to an expert or a teacher, they will say, oh man, these questions are so easy. It's just not fair giving them. These are dead simple. But when they actually gave them to students, they were shocked at the results. With this attempt to transmit our physics wisdom, what they learned was that only 23% of the improvement that they could make on this test of questions, they gave it at the beginning of their course and at the end of their course. They only improved by 23% of what they could have improved. And this number, 23%, is very robust. If you were the lecturer of the year at Harvard, professor of the year, your score for your students was very, very close to this. If you were some craptacular teacher, your score was very, very close to this. Which was telling them something about their teaching. This result is really not awesome. And there's something strange going on. Now, we should have clued into this a long time ago, because you've probably had this experience, right? You come up with your best lesson ever. So you have this great idea, and then you organize it so carefully, and then you explain it to your student, and you dazzle them with the amazing things that you can do. And you're just convinced that you have taught this so well and so carefully that monkeys can do it. And then you give them the test, the quiz, and it's like from the Forest Moon of Endor, the big explosion, they bomb it in epic style. I'm sure this has happened to all of us. And what's really important is how we interpret the results of that. Because in a previous generation, and we're left with asking this question, what's going on upstairs in my students' heads? After all this effort that I put in, why am I a teacher if those are the results? 23%. Right? They bomb those quizzes, no matter how carefully you design your lesson. There's two possible interpretations for this result. Right? One of them, as explained by this t-shirt here, is the idea that, physics is hard. It's just hard. And we can't expect everybody to do well at physics, because it's hard. And certainly that seems to be the opinion of, the unfortunate opinion, of my hero Feynman. Right? Only a small fraction we should even expect to do well. The others, I'm glad they're there. It's good for them, for sure. But this is one way of interpreting those results, which helps to preserve the self-esteem and the intrinsic awesomeness of the people involved in the teaching side. But there's another very important explanation.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which, raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government.
I gather you're familiar with that segment. And he seems like a really nice man. Right? There's not a malicious bone in his body, but it does go a long way towards answering this question. Right? What's going on upstairs in the minds of his students there? Very, very little. Right? It's an extremely passive form of learning that he's using. And this is what should be commonly known as bad teaching. So there's two possible explanations for those disastrous results that we all come across in our teaching. One is the stuff is hard, and the other is bad teaching. And a generation ago, we know what they would have decided on. But in my generation of physics teachers, we're really looking at this angle here, and we're beginning to understand just how poor traditional education was. I like to think of it as the educational dark ages that we've been in these many years, 100-odd years since the public education system really ramped up. And in these educational dark ages, our teaching techniques, the traditional teaching techniques that we have been guided by, well, no great surprise, tradition, right? We taught the way that we were taught. And by anecdotes, a colleague will say, oh, this worked well for me, or, you had a good experience here. Your kind of hunches about, I think this is going to work. And it's a whole lot of trial and error. This is what I call traditional teaching. And the educational dark. My wife is a medieval historian, and she's not happy that I've used pictures like this in my presentations, but I have to do it still to bug her. But the good news is that we are in the midst of a scientific revolution for teaching. This is what gets me really excited about teaching. This is the reason why I do these presentations, because there is a dramatic paradigm shift taking place in our educational world. You see, over the last 100 years of public education, we've been trying to mix together the chocolate of science. Whenever you see science with an exclamation mark, you know how that's supposed to be said, right? Science. So whenever you see science with an exclamation mark, you're allowed to say science, if you have to say it from the gut. Science. So combine the chocolate of science with the peanut butter of teaching. And all this while, it's been done the wrong way. It was just, okay, we're just teaching science. But what it really should be is scientific teaching, a scientific approach to the pedagogical tasks of teaching. This is what we are now doing with our scientific revolution. And our process is basically something like this. We have theories. Right now they are still very crude, because it's only really been 30 years that we've been working hard at this. But we have theories of what is taking place inside the minds of our students. And we do research to try to improve those theories. Then we develop our new curriculum based on that. Then we try it out in actual instruction. And the cycle continues. All the while making improvements to this or changes to this based on our new understanding of what's going on in our students' minds. So this is our basic approach. Now, if you were taught in a traditional classroom, or if you are a teacher of a traditional classroom, the reformed classroom will look very different, perhaps even foreign. This is my classroom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do a quick check-in on your work. On your big whiteboards, I would like you to draw that first interaction diagram and force diagram, then put it up against the wall and window so that it cannot be seen.
Hey guys, how's it going? Good, good. I was wondering about our two forces here. Are these forces the two forces of a single third law pair? Why do you think that?
Because they don't follow all of these characteristics.
So which characteristics don't they have?
Not the same type.
Not the same type? Any others?
Would we have to have like another line?
Oh, then that's bio. Yeah, oh wait, I like to okay, wait, but then so there'd be two downward forces, right?
Well, what if there's two down and then it's like yeah.
You get a brief glimpse of what the reformed classroom looks like. Some of the key features of this is that it's really the students who are doing the heavy lifting. The students are doing the thinking. And they're building their understanding themselves. Rather than me telling them what the answers are, what the results are, they're doing a lot of conceptual work, trying to figure out this stuff. And they do this through investigation, explanation, and discussion, which, by no small coincidence, is basically the process of, you're feeling a bit shy. There we go. And what a novel idea, right? Have them learn science by doing science. Right? Back in my day, you would do the one lab, usually at the end of the unit or something like that. But this is an intrinsic part of the learning process. Right? They are constantly going through these types of investigations to build their own personal understanding of science. And then, what's the role of the teacher? You saw a brief glimpse, grainy glimpse of that, because my role is now much more of a coach for this process. So we help them sort through all the details because, you know, it took people 2,000 years to figure out these physics ideas. And without very careful coaching, your students won't figure it out themselves. So we help them with that. And then we provide all that other context and insight that students, that teachers love to include. And this is what a typical lesson looks like. Now, what's very important is that I'm not wasting my students' time with the transmission of information. Any of the important information they're given, and then the vast majority of their time is taken up by going through their activities and either doing simple experiments or going through discussions that help to sort through these ideas. So this is what my classroom looks like. Now, language is a very, and this is one of our key themes today, it's a very important element of this new way of learning science because the students are constantly discussing and writing about their ideas. And I think this is especially helpful for our ESL students because they're getting constant practice. And the fact that they are within these small groups for an extended period of time allows them to build up relationships with their colleagues that will hopefully encourage them to ask more questions. You know, what does this word mean? Or if they write something down, does this make sense? Which they would never do in a traditional lecture class. So this style of learning can be extremely helpful for our ESL students. And if you want to advocate for your ESL students within your various departments and institutions, cooperative group work is a great help for them. Now, one of the other things that I do as a teacher is I collect a lot of data about my students to understand how they are doing, and if I change a pedagogical practice, what results do those bring? And this is the key ingredient that turns all of this, our process of teaching and generating pedagogy, this is what turns it into science. This is what turns teaching into science. We're collecting data to test the effectiveness of our theories and what are our experiments, our pedagogical experiments. And then we go through that revision process that is always taking place within the scientific community. Now, this transition from traditional to reformed teaching is a very slow and gradual one. I can't say at all that all high school classrooms are like that. That's far from the case. But over the last 10 years, we've been making a lot of progress in this respect. This is not a fad. Just like Newton's laws were not a fad. They were chosen because they work extremely well, demonstrably better than the previous sets of Aristotelian ideas. The same thing with teaching. There is now an abundance of evidence that shows the superiority of these teaching practices. And so these will not be disappearing when the ministry changes their minds or the wind blows in a different way. So from all this research into improved educational practices, what have we learned? So I want to do a bit of a summary of that for you so you can take away some of the main points. And one of the most critical is the idea of active learning. So active learning makes the biggest overall difference in our students' ability to improve their understanding of science. And active learning is basically the opposite of passively listening to somebody as they talk away. I know, you just can't. But the important parts is that we are constantly engaging our students in higher order thinking, and our standard tool is cooperative group work. Now, there was a major study that was brought out, this is the one that I quote here, and if you download the PowerPoint, you can get that reference there, which shows within the STEM